It is interesting to note as we turn to China, we have a massive meeting that we are watching that could take place on Wednesday, Thursday, Friday. It's believed that President Trump would arrive in Beijing on Wednesday. You'd have meetings on Thursday and Friday. There's been some questions about whether or not this meeting would even take place. We didn't actually hear confirmation from Chinese officials until we saw some confirmation this morning on social media. And I'm going to show you a little bit of that in just a moment. So this meeting was supposed to happen several weeks ago. It was moved because of what was happening in Iran. There were some questions about whether or not it was going to take place at all. And it's ironic to sort of talk about this meeting, understanding that the last time we had a major meeting where it was really just set up that President Trump was going to meet President Xi was back in 2017 in an official capacity, visiting in China, visiting in someone's home country at the seat of government, was before the pandemic even took place. So that this first sort of big meeting in official capacity where President Trump visited China was in 2017. There's been a whole bunch of different meetings on the sidelines of different events. President Xi had gone to Mar-a-Lago, but I'm talking what makes this meeting particularly different is it's with the intention of it being a state visit. So even in 2017, President Trump was like on his Asia tour and he stopped by China to have this visit. You know, if President Xi was in San Francisco for a separate summit, President Trump met with, the representatives were meeting on the sideline. So this is different in this way, that it's a very specific set time where you have the leader of the United States of America meeting with the leader of China, the leader of the free world, as President Trump has described, meeting the leader of the largest communist nation in the world, and that's President Xi of China, with the actual understanding that the agenda is between the two of them, and that this is something that we don't see very often. So the question is, of course, what's going to happen? A couple weeks ago, I spoke with Gordon Chang, one of our favorite Asia analysts that we talked to on a variety of different occasions here on Smarter News. And at that time, there was a question about whether or not an earlier meeting was going to take place. And here's what Gordon had to say about whether or not President Trump should actually take this meeting at all.
I think he should not go. Now, there are a lot of this. I'm not as apoplectic about it as I was a couple of weeks ago, but he shouldn't go. The reason he should, well, there are now additional reasons he shouldn't go. First of all, the most important thing is Trump is going to the Chinese capital, and he's going first. And the Chinese are going to look at this like the vassal going to the Grand Celestial Court. Mm-hmm. And Trump doesn't think he's a vassal. Trump doesn't think he is showing his submission to China. But what Trump thinks does not matter. What matters is what the Chinese think.
So let's take a look at what the Chinese think. This is a video that was released on social media. It was about a 2-minute video. This is kind of the short section towards the end. And by the way, the voice sounds to be AI generated. So if you hear this strange voice, I don't know whose it is, but it'll be a little distracting. So here's part of this promotional video coming from the Chinese Communist Party.
Neither China nor the U.S. can remodel each other, but they can choose how they want to engage. The right choice is to commit to the principle of mutual respect, to hold the line on peaceful coexistence, and to strive for the prospect of win-win cooperation. The Earth is too small for China and the U.S. to turn against and confront each other, and the Pacific Ocean is vast enough for both to prosper in their own ways. China and the U.S. must coexist peacefully on this planet for all time to come. A ready and open China is right here. It is now for the U.S. to choose the right course.
Interesting final line, for the U.S. to choose the right course. What do you think that means? Well, that's really a question. Like, what does that actually mean? But this is the video that's being released by China with the understanding that President Trump is visiting Beijing. You hear the way Gordon Chang was phrasing this and describing it as the way that China sees it is different than the way that the American public or America can see this meeting. And there's a question here of what does a successful meeting look like? So I did some research across a variety of different sources, think tanks and whatnot. that are listing out, hey, here's the 3 things to watch when, President Trump goes to China. Here's the 5 things. Here's the 10 things. And, there's all sorts of talks about the tariffs, trade agreement, rare earth minerals. I mean, the things that we've talked about over the last several years. Obviously, these are the 2 largest economies in the world meeting. What happens in the United States impacts China. What happens in China impacts the United States. So the economy is definitely in focus. But what my big takeaway after all of that reading was really what we're watching for is for anything to go wrong. It's not necessarily that there's a list of victories that are very clear about the United States going there and having negotiations and walking away with this signed deal or that signed deal. What I'm really watching for is any break or tension that's taking place while President Trump is in China, because that will be a sign to the world about this relationship and where it stands today. And quite frankly, the opposite. If there's no real dust up or tension and it's a warm meeting with some questions about the road ahead, then that's going to be the takeaway. It almost seems like those are the big sort of points that we're watching for. Is not a specific policy per se. It's more of a feeling. And if that is that sort of falls in line more with diplomacy. What is the sort of relationship? What's the nature of this relationship? Especially because we're watching to see, well, how much does Iran reach out to China for support here as Iran continues to push back on the United States and what the United States wants to see from Iran? How much does China support Russia? There's a lot of quite a few headlines coming out of Ukraine and a question about the path forward in the war there. It's taken a bit of a back seat because we have this conflict in the Middle East. But that's something where we watch to see, well, what are China's actions there? What's the nature of China's relationship with North Korea, one of the State Department's state designated sponsors of terrorism? So what is the nature of the U.S. relationship with China under the Trump administration? Is it warm or is it cold? And it sounds really basic, but that to me is what we're going to be watching for this week. Any notable change in tone between the 2 countries, for better or for worse. And that's going to be what we're going to be keeping an eye on. We'll let you know, of course, if that changes. So thank you for your support of quick, concise, nonpartisan, smarter news. We'll be here with all the developments on smarternews.com and across social media as well. So find us there, Instagram, X, YouTube, wherever you prefer. We love seeing you and we appreciate your support. Have a great week wherever you are, guys. I'll see you soon. Bye.